Would you believe there's even cars nowadays with engines that won't even last 60,000 miles? With all of this great technology, better fueling and oiling, there's still many manufacturers that just can't quite get it right. Thanks for the viewers and their comments have offered these up. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. So the first failure of an engine that makes the list is from Mayud246. He's a viewer that reached out, commented that GM has had a whole host of issues with engines that you'll find equipped in some of these SUVs and other vehicles. As you see, we've got the Chevy there, and you got the old school taillights, Chevy logo there, and this one here is a Traverse LTZ. It's a clearly fairly large size SUV. You can also find that engine packaged in the Acadia, the Enclave, as well as a Cadillac XT6. And that's essentially the earlier generation 3.6 liter V6 VVT, so the variable valve timing system, is not a great engine. I mean, yes, it makes good performance. Yes, it's great for economy, but unfortunately, a lot of transmission failures outright associated with that engine, sudden acceleration loss to the point where you're putting the throttle down and the vehicle just won't run. And Car Wizard also confirms that these engines have a problem because it doesn't begin and end with sudden acceleration issues. It's also reliability, coolant, oil loss, and of course the bigger problem is what's right down into the front here, and it's called the timing chain and the chain guides. And the chain guides break or slip, and basically you have a timing chain that slips a cog. If that happens, what do you think's gonna happen? Piston valve collision, and that's all over but the crying. It's not a great generational engine. It has the potential on paper. Some people love them and some people get away scot-free, but unfortunately that early generation 3.6 liter GM motor is not necessarily one that's going to last over 60,000 miles. So viewer Kenny B actually reaches out and says the engine packaged in these popular little sporty subcompact SUVs are a troublesome little sort. And what we're dealing with here is clearly it's the little blue oval right here. As we can see, it's from Ford, and look, it's an EcoBoost four-wheel drive, and yes, it's the Escape right there. But let's take a quick look around and we'll talk about some of these engine issues. Very stylish looking unit, obviously has these Pep Boy looking units there, of course alloy wheels, beautiful front headlights, and of course the big oval right there pointing in the screen. But what do you have other than transmission issues and other big electronic troubles? You actually have engine troubles galore. And according to vehiclehistory.com, there's a whole plethora of issues that you can experience. Potentially, a lot of them have to do with coolant. Many issues exist with this particular 1.5 or 2 liter EcoBoost engine. Some of them related to coolant leaks, sudden loss of power, vehicle rollaways, and even NHTSA has addressed concerns with brake fluid and faulty airbag systems. Now specifically, we're dealing with engines from 2013 to 2019 where we have coolant issues migrating into the engine. Well, what's that all about? Well, allegedly on these engines, coolant often leaks down into the cylinders. And when that happens, they end up burning coolant. Sometimes it means coolant, white smoke coming out of the exhaust tips, which could result in overheating, failing, consumption of coolant, and as well potential for catching fire. Another engine fire potential right here, just looming to happen. And drivers often notice that this cylinder head was cracked, which was one of the contributing factors. Poor quality as well as the thin sidewalls on the combustion chamber. And depending on the severity of the failures, $1,000 might be the card, or even up to $6,000 or $7,000 if you're having to do a full motor job. So it's not a cheap repair, and most of them have failed catastrophically well before 70 or 80,000 miles. Putting them at that 60,000 mile range is a stretch. And so viewer Greta offers up another one. And clearly we have a Chevy product, and this is a Trax. Yes, oh, it has a little trailer hitch, but I wouldn't dare trailering anything with this. You'll blow the engine for sure. Yeah, it does little alloy wheels and plastic shrouding and cutesy little mirrors, and yeah, a little trailer trash rack on top. But here you have fake plastic, more fake plastic, more fake plastic. It doesn't just begin and end with the Chevy Trax, it's also the Cruze, it's also the Buick Encore, as well as the little Chevy Sonic that share the 1.4 liter Ecotec turbocharged dumpster fire of an engine. But that engine under that hood is where you can get into a lot of trouble. There's a lot of problems. The biggest problem is you can't even get a replacement engine until probably in 2024. or they're backlogged, they're back ordered. And if you actually happen to blow an engine on this, you're gonna have to wait. What sort of engines would you anticipate with this little unit? How about oil burning? Is that bad enough? Nobody likes an oil burning engine. How about turbocharged failures, as well as other internal engine catastrophes? We can't forget the piston rings and holdout pistons are another one through the detonation and blowing a hole, thus resulting in a catastrophic engine. Boom! Oh, and that is all it. All over, but the crying car wizard confirms that. Yes, in fact, I too know of several mechanics that have dealt with these vehicles, and that Ecotec engine is just one for the dumpster. Unfortunately, it's one that won't make 60,000 miles. Sorry. And the next catastrophe of an engine that won't make it 60,000 miles is what's under the hood of this little rig. And the comment directly comes from the Chob Gobbler, who says that there's a lot of issues with this, and they have personally had experiences with pretty much every problem I'm about to note here. Well, other than the engine itself, I mean, we know it's a Jeep, we know it's a Cherokee, and clearly it's lacking in durability. Electrics, you could expect. Transmission problems, absolutely, that's a common failure point. But as we get around, it's not a pretty vehicle. I mean, with some basic looking lighting and a tow hitch, which will literally guarantee to blow out that gearbox, as well as alloy wheels that look like something from 1995 called, and a low grade of handle, there's really not a lot to love about this particular Cherokee, other than what some people think Jeep actually carries a little bit of street cred. But there's no street credibility because that engine is called the World Gas Engine remake. It's called a 2.4 liter Tiger Shark engine. Yeah, four banger. Absolutely. Multi-air, yeah, variable valve timing, air and fuel in, exhaust out. It's just a matter of adjusting the timing on that. And clearly, this is not a good engine. There's a variety of reasons why. How about failing thermostats, which does allow the vehicle to either overheat or underheat, and that will cause problems. Exhaust manifold problems there where they crack. Have you ever heard of a cracked exhaust manifold? Where they actually spit and it sounds like it's kind of chick. Another big issue, coolant loss, coolant burning. Consumption, oil consumption, which nobody wants an engine that's burning oil, but this Tiger Shark is notorious for that. It's also notorious for carbon up, and as well, they're talking about heavy emissions because it's consuming so much oil. When you put tailpipe emission measurement equipment on it, it actually exceeds what a reasonable amount would be. It also is known for overheating, largely because it can lose coolant or burn coolant, so it's not a great engine, consuming liquids that shouldn't be consumed, and most other components built around it feel very, very fragile, and as a result, you will likely never get 60,000 miles out of one of those 2.4 liter Tiger Shark engines. And so viewer D9R actually asked the question, what about the RX8? What kind of engine's in there, and does that have engine problems? Right here, we have a Mazda RX8, and in fact it does. It has a twin rotor, multi-port fuel injection called a 13B Renesis engine. Yeah, it's a twin rotor engine. It has these two three-sided rotors that spin out of sync, and of course they have these little seals. They call them the apex seals, and those are common known issues. Now, the Mazdas have always created a very unique effect with some of those RX-7s and RX-8s. I personally owned an 88 back in the day, and they rev to the moon. They're fun to drive. They whistle along like a vacuum cleaner, and if you pull the rev limiter, you can get up to 17, 18,000 RPM without them blowing a gasket. However, these ones are not quite the same level of durability, and there's problems with that Renesis engine. Of course, you don't see these many around anymore because they don't last all that long. It's beautiful. There's the old Mazda logo. Of course, they have these beautiful high beams right there blasting away, and a pretty interesting front grille. I love these fender flares that you'll find in here, and they have that little grille and a tiny little mirrors. How about those suicide doors that flip this way instead of that way? Of course, look at that, gas cap, quite nice, and an aftermarket looking style of taillights here on this Mazda RX-8 right here. It's a beautiful looking car, and it's too bad that they didn't extend and further develop this chassis and design with a better engine. Yeah, you have sunroof there, and you have a pretty cool interior with a manual gearbox, which is a dying breed these days, but it's that Renesis engine which is going to eat your lunch. So what kind of problems would you expect? Extended warranty insurance companies have gone out and said that this engine has far exceeded almost any other engine on the market for lacking reliability and the fact that you have to replace it. 60,000 miles is a stretch. Good luck you even trying to get there with one of these engines. Yeah, you can get other issues like catalytic converter failures, which plug off and reduce that back pressure or increase the back pressure so the engine won't start properly. Starter issues you can anticipate as well. Power steering problems, not directly engine, but lots of issues with that, as well as the shifter knobs. But ignition coils are one of the big problems. You'll eat those like lunch. The engine floods very easily as well, partially because it may not get ignition or spark properly, and then it winds up just flooding the engine, pouring out and washing away the cylinder compression spaces. Those infamous apex seals already mentioned, they wear out way too prematurely. And once they wear out, then you reduce the compression, you start washing the cylinders, and it becomes a vicious cycle of catastrophes, one leading to the next, and it just cascades from there. The simple fact is, the Renesis engine does not last over 60,000 miles, and good luck if you get one that does. Wow, you're a better guy than me. Twin rotor 13B Renesis engine, for the loss. So viewer My Cat is Smarter actually references a very good point, that some of the engines that you'll find in some of these modern day Subarus, and I spoke of that in previous videos, but specifically to some of the turbocharged engines that are big problems, big troubles. But let's take a look and understand why people are buying these anyway. I mean, generally Subaru has a pretty solid reputation for durability, but there are some engine issues with some of these. Pretty aggressive looking Subaru. Yeah, this one's a WRX and it has some great mirrors and no sunroof, keeps the weight of center of gravity down, and of course you do have these basic looking lights. But notice, look, set of exhaust tips, quad style in the house right there, and of course beautiful wheels and a great interior that's simple and yet effective when you roll your own gears like this car. But the sad reality is there are some engine troubles. I personally know people that have had experience. Throwing new engines in these cars is nothing uncommon. Why? What sort of problems can you get with this engine, and what engine is this? Well, we're dealing with the engine code FA20FF. Faulty O2 sensors, which gives the wrong feedback, so eats those like it's going out of style, possibly because of the additional turbocharger heat that you get on the exhaust side. They also tend to consume and leak oil at an alarming rate. I mean, you'd almost think they're a BMW engine, but they eat oil like it's going out of style, so that's a big issue. Having to put in a $10 quart of synthetic every week on the week is definitely not in my best interest, and probably not yours either, but that's not where the real problem arises. Turbochargers, yeah, it eats them. That can get expensive, $3,000 to $4,000 to retrofit a turbocharger into this car, but it's some of the internal engine components here that will ensure that this vehicle likely won't make it 60,000 miles, almost no matter what you do. What kind of problems in that beautiful little turbo 4-cylinder lump that you could expect will cause you heartache? Well, the connecting rods are one of the issues that connects your pistons to your crankshaft. Then the rod bearings themselves is another issue that connects your connecting rod to the crankshaft, and those interface is known to fail, and prematurely, I might add. And sadly, they also tend to eat up piston rings. So you eat up piston rings, that's your compression. So if you eat up piston rings, you either lose compression or you consume oil. If it's your oil control ring, then it can basically just not run properly, burn oil and the like. And a lot of that does tend to come on because of a lot of people like to modify these WRXs and STIs because they like to put go fast parts on them, turn up the boost, bigger turbos, make them go faster, sure. And that's where you really exacerbate the problem. But the reality is a lot of these WRXs and STIs just don't have the staying power that some of the more conservative engine designs do. So at the end of the day, the WRX 2015 and 16 for the loss. And my Jude actually has another one for this crap list of vehicle engines that just won't last 60,000 miles, and it's right there. And we have from 1997 to 2010, you have a V8 engine here. And this V8 engine is actually 5.4 liter by varied displacement. As you can see right here, this is the Triton V8. That is one of the worst engines in Ford's history. It has a 3-valve configuration on this engine and has been a problem that's not repairable. And these engines just keep going on, failure after failure, and you have to replace engines or rebuild them to the tune of $7,000 or $8,000 every single time, and you can never make it right. All you can do is fix it, wait it out, and you'll fix it again. And these engines, you can expect problems, for example, like blocked oil passages that can actually negatively impact your phase problems, which is your cam phasers, and that affects your timing. Without that, you don't have an engine running properly. And just Google cam phasers. There's no shortage of commentary on there. Lots of DIYers at home. But at the end of the day, it's these Fords For example, the F-150, 250, Excursion, and Expedition that share these garbage engines from 97 to 2010 way too long, and just means that you just better steer away from this heartbreak drivetrain. Gremlins R Us actually made a recommendation, and it has to do with this German tank what we have right here. And unfortunately, Mercedes is known for durability and that quality of German engineering and construction, but sometimes they just sort of miss the boat, and this is an example. So from 2005 to 2011, we can expect and anticipate a certain engine. It's the base engine, 2.5 liter, 3 and 3.5 liter V6 engines that you can get either in the C-Class or in the E-Class Mercedes-Benz. And yeah, Mercedes, look at this. It's a beautiful ride. A gorgeous set of headlights, and it's basically this grille that more or less gives away that generation. You can see beautiful front end on there, alloy wheels. Love that mirror. Look at that right there. That's great. Sunroof on top and a beautiful styling at the back. For the C-Class, we'd expect to see the C230 as the base model engine. That is the one in question. And these different engine configurations come with horsepower ranging from anywhere from about 200 horsepower up to about 312. Some of the big problems you can expect from this engine is oil leakage from the cam plugs. You can expect frequent breaking of the intake manifold because things are plastic and things just aren't built to last. Timing chains, of course, they stretch, and it was built of a substandard material, and they stretch and then they catastrophically fail. Oh, that's all over but the crying when pistons and valves connect, or even just chain rattle is enough to annoy your day. On a cold start, you get that vehicle just rattle up. That's a clear indication that you might have that problem. So the challenges of keeping this vehicle running and serviced are significant. And the timing chain challenges become a result of the balance shaft scenario. And it's not uncommon for a lot of German-made vehicles to have balance shaft issues, intermediate shaft issues. It seems to be a common thread, but this one is certainly no different. And the reality is you can also get coolant leaks, oil leaks, and the like. It just becomes cost prohibitive. The engine's not made to last, and you could actually expect the M272 to actually call it quits between 50, 60, maybe 70,000 miles or higher reported engine lifespans. These engines aren't made for the long haul, and sadly, Mercedes just kind of missed it with the M272. And Chalk 201 actually says this is the next worst engine in line, and I would tend to agree because I had one. So these run from about 2006 to about 2010. What are we talking about here? Well, they're planted in this beautiful little rig right here. As you can see, this is a BMW. Pretty clearly, you have your standard grills here. That's angel eye style, and of course, you've got your projection headlamps there and beautiful alloy wheels. Of course, they got the little marker lights on there. Pretty basic mirrors. This one here happens to be a convertible. Obviously, you can see the segments there. Beautiful vehicle the way it looks, and the handles are well made, as are the rockers. The interior is very, very clean as well, and the seats wear well. But it's not about the way this car looks, and even the gearbox is pretty solid in it too. And any of these generational E90, E92 BMWs that tend to carry those dual exhaust tips, or that same generation 2007 to about 2010 with the dual exhaust tips, also the 5 Series cars, have the same engine that have the designation 35. So 335, 535, those cars you want to avoid like the plague simply because of the engine. What is it? Well, it's a 3-liter twin-turbo straight 6. BMW thought in all their infinite wisdom they were going to evolve from a naturally aspirated, highly reliable linear power band type engine into something like this that creates 300 horsepower. Oh yeah, it absolutely looked like front page news with the performance figures. Strap that to a manual, it's a lot of fun. I owned one, but trust me when I say this BMW engine called the N54 is one of the most unreliable lumps you'll ever find in any BMW vehicle at any point in history. And there's a lot of issues with that. Down underneath there, you have a water pump underneath there, and the thermostat, they connect up, and to get them, you actually have to remove a whole pile of hardware underneath, steering rack components, and a whole lot of other lines and brackets and fittings just to get access to it. And then when you get access to it, it's very difficult to get and change it, so labor costs are very, very high, and that's a common failure point, as are all the other cooling lines, antifreeze, coolant system leaks, oil leaks. The oil filter housing on the front is a leaker. It either leaks coolant, oil on 2 different parts, and as well it can mix, so it's a big problem there. Turbochargers on this side, there's two of them. It's the wastegates start to rattle and clink when you turn the vehicle off. That's a common failure point there as well. And turbos, they get expensive. Lots of labor to get them changed out, and you're talking $3,000 to $4,000. Blown charge pipes here, that's a big issue. The high-pressure fuel pump made the radar for BMW in terms of recalls and bulletins, and most people had them done on the first dime, but unfortunately, they can go again and again, as do the direct-injected fuel injectors, which are big money. And then we can't forget this car just carbons up like there's no tomorrow. Then you have to walnut blast it all the time. It reduces performance. The fact that it's also an open deck design, there's a possibility for blowing head gaskets. I literally don't know where to begin and end with this, other than the fact that it leaks, it smokes, it fails, check engine lights. If you make over 60,000 miles with this, you are one of the lucky ones, because the N54, although it performs well and the tuner special, guaranteed it's not going to last. And another disaster here for engines is what's under this hood. And I know two people who actually personally own them, one personal friend and as well as a friend of the family. And I know mechanics that have stuck working on these vehicles. Now, when they're working well, they're great, but these engines aren't really built for longevity. They're not built to get a lot of hard miles out of them and a lot of hard use. They just won't last. They won't tolerate it. And aside from what this is, clearly we're talking about a Volkswagen, and this is even what the birds are thinking about them. Yeah, they have great wheels, and look, nice fold-away mirrors. Look at that single touch access in, and look, we got a sunroof on top with roof racks. Of course, here we have the V-dub, flips up, gives you the rear view mirror, and this is the 4Motion. Of course, beautiful taillights. This fairly feels actually like an Audi product here, for sure, no doubt about it. Now, the interior is quite dialed in too, and it's a very nice looking vehicle. The engine we're describing is the DKFA 7 Turbo. Yeah, it's a 2.0. But aside from the engine specifically, there's infotainment related issues, there's issues with the lighting that aren't functioning properly, the emergency braking system that doesn't quite dial in properly. There's lots of little nickel and dime troubles here with this vehicle, meaning it's a question whether the whole vehicle will even make it 60,000 miles, never mind just the engine alone. But the engine has some problems of its own. For example, throttle body problems. Throttle bodies aren't working right, you don't get a nice idle, the vehicle doesn't run properly, it's sluggish off the start, it surges and hunts, so throttle bodies are a problem. Also, carbon deposits in there means you're gonna have to do regular maintenance on the intake to clean all of that up. Another big problem. Another issue is touching the gas, and it hesitates. It just hesitates to go. Doesn't give you the go power when you need it. Also, another big issue, one of the big ones, is related to timing chains. Right, these vehicles have timing chain issues, and when you lose a timing chain coordination between the pistons and valves, that's actually what keeps it all in sync. What do you think's gonna happen? Boom! Well, really, boom really only comes from an interference engine. That's when you actually have overlap between piston and valve. Non-interference engine just means it'll get rattly, it'll go out of sync, it won't run right, it'll make noise, you get a check engine light, and the vehicle will stop working. And it all has to do with the tensioners. The plastics in there, you get the guides, the ramps, the tensioners, and they get weak, and the vehicle just won't run right. And it means thousands of dollars out of your hard-earned wallet to actually keep that vehicle on the road. Now, sadly, that engine, great performer when it's brand new, but it's not one for the lifespan, and it likely won't make over 60,000 miles. And with all of that said, right there, check it out. That's a recent, very popular video. 50,000 miles is all you're gonna get out of those engines, and you're definitely gonna wanna check that out so you don't make the drastic mistake many other millions of people unfortunately have. Hope to see you real soon on the next one. Catch you then. Bye-bye.